Hello and welcome to another episode of Salmon's Pizzeria, bringing you your slice of Scottish football. I'm Ethan Hampton, and today I'm joined with my guest, Jack. Jack, if you'd like to maybe announce your credentials here. Yeah, I'll let you saved as Jack. I don't actually have your full name.
So I am Jack Cranmer. I do a few other podcasts which I won't name to stand about, but I'm a Rangers fan. Do a bit of writing on that, but yeah, just love any sort of opportunity to talk Scottish football and mostly rant.
Yeah, and at the time of recording, we are in the Thursday night. So as we speak, both Hibs and Dundee United are in the midst of their European adventures. But we're looking at the weekend first and foremost, Jack. Some interesting results across the board for the league opener. And we'll start off, I think, with the Dundee Hibs game, the game I was at. And there's a couple of things of note. I mean, on one hand, you have Hibs. Now, Hibs, over the course of the game, they didn't create an awful lot, but they also didn't look like a team that had played 120 minutes of football just a few days prior. So I think that's the sign of a real team that's fit.
Yep.
Of course, this is a team that started off last season ever so poorly, bottomed the league around about Christmas time, and then they just seemed to turn it on. And an unbelievable redemption story for David Gray's men to clinch third place. And there's a saying that, begin as you mean to go on, and that's they bounced back from that disappointing result against Midtjylland. Come think of it, did I say Hibs are in the middle of a European adventure right now? Are they not knocked out?
No, they're playing Partizan Belgrade in the Conference League.
Right. Good. For a second,
That's a great start.
Yeah, tremendous start. I know I'd read that Hibs were definitely playing, but then just in my head, I'm sure I said they were knocked out on Sunday. So mistake on that.
Out of the Europa League, straight into the conference.
Yeah. But yeah, no. The point is, it's a Hibs team that looked very fit. They still looked as organised as they did last season. It wasn't the most fashionable display, but you can still see, even in the early signs, this is a team that's ready to go for the race for third again. At least that's what I saw on Sunday. Kieran Bowie as well is an absolute beast. When I watched him last season before his injury, he looked like a goal threat, but he also looked like he was an intelligent kind of runner getting in behind the lines. Whereas now he is completely bulked up. He was, obviously very hard to handle, scored his brace, but physically he seems to be so much better developed compared to last year. So I wouldn't be surprised if we go to the end of the season and Hibs star man or the star duo would prove to be the youthful duo of Kieran Bowie and Josh Mulligan. But looking at the game from a Dundee perspective, I felt Dundee were lacking a lot of creativity. They were poor in possession. They kind of really lacked any ideas. It was quite frustrating. I'm watching the game, and at points where the sensible option is to put your foot through it and clear the ball, they were trying to play out the back, and they were getting caught in possession, and vice versa. When the appropriate option was, a calm and measured forward pass, maybe catch Hibs on the break, then they were putting their foot through the ball and basically either gifting back possession and by putting it off play for a throw in, or by just putting it up for the Hibs goalie to collect again. The only real positives you can take watching that as a Dundee fan, because Dundee created very little too. I think every shot on target was basically a goal, and across the board they were all from defensive mistakes. Dundee, however, off the ball, I thought looked a lot more rigid compared to last season. They looked like they'd be harder to break down, which I think is huge. That was a big issue for Dundee last season. They conceded far too many goals. That was a massive factor into what cost Tony Docherty his job. They still have players to watch. Luke Graham was particularly a standout for Dundee. They just need quality added in for the foreseeable winnable games. Because up next for Dundee, of course, it's a trip to Ibrox, and they're knocked out the League Cup, so they have the weekend off before they have away to Killie and home to Dundee United. So you kind of feel that they're bracing themselves for two early defeats against teams that should be really in the top three, and then reset themselves for the league kicking on. As I say, with Hibs, admirable performance against Midtjylland, and they bounced back in the perfect way possible. They had a lot of the ball. They had a lot of ball as well. So 120 minutes of football on the Thursday, then on the Sunday at Dens Park. Like I said, there was no sign of tired legs, and they still had a lot of work to do. So I don't know how much of the game you caught, Jack. If you have any thoughts on Dundee or Hibs, because of course it's the last time they played each other before that. Would you believe it? Dundee actually spanked Hibs 4-1, and I think that was the last defeat David Gray's Hibs faced before the miraculous turnaround.
Yeah, so I didn't see the game. I've seen it back in Sports Soon. But I've got a few takes on both sides. I was at Hibs' game against Midtjylland on Thursday night. I was actually, despite the defeat, I was really impressed by Hibs. I do think I've tipped them previously to be, third again this year. I know Hearts and Aberdeen, etc., have all improved, but I just think when you've got that winning mentality they built up last year, it's hard to see past them. Been up there again. Like you mentioned, they weren't as impressive against Dundee, but despite the fitness levels you said were impressive, it is, it's going to be a big mental hit, losing obviously at 119th minute overhead kick to knock you out of the Europa League. So I can kind of understand why maybe they weren't at their best. But Hibs impressed me. Actually, the last time I seen Hibs before Thursday was when they beat Dundee 4-0, right towards the end of that run they had last year, and I just thought they looked absolutely incredible. Kieran Boy scored twice that day, and every time I've seen him either on TV or in person since, he's really impressed me. And see, to be honest, if he keeps this up, that's a guy you should be looking at to be on a potential point in the World Cup if that becomes a possibility. But for Dundee, I mean, I know they're your team, but yeah, I don't see this being a great year. Stephen Pressley can have all the coaching credentials from Brentford he wants. I just don't buy him as a top man. He just doesn't. It doesn't seem to inspire much belief. And if I played for him, I don't think I'd be too hyped up. But I've seen stranger things happen. He's mentioned about how he's went away and learned, but yeah, these first two games, obviously, you mentioned Hibs today, Rangers on Saturday. They're not the games Presley will be judged on. He'll have a longer time to get his ideas across, make his mark. But those Premier Sports Cup games, as much as you can sort of pretend they're friendlies, losing to lower league opposition, needing 2 late goals to beat Bonnyrigg in the Lone League, it's not a good start, and it doesn't help the doubters he already had. But if he backs himself to change it and improve it, you need to give him time. But I don't think the early warning signs are great, despite taking Hibs close.
Yeah, I've just kind of occurred to me there that I think this is my first podcast appearance on Simon's Pizzeria since the appointment of Stephen Pressley. I can totally understand how it looks on the outside as well. When you say about it's not for you, it's not inspiring. But the one thing I will pick you up on, you said if you were playing for him, you wouldn't feel particularly inspired. I think that is the one thing Pressley has going for him, is he does command a lot of respect from the players. When he got the job, we had a couple of guys that played in this Falkirk team that were backing him to smash it. Now, He actually did really well at Falkirk, but the main description I got from him was that he's a real players manager, will never throw his own players under the bus. And you got to remember from his playing career, he actually was a pretty influential captain. He was a Scottish Cup winning captain at Hearts. So he will at the very least command the respect of the players. And you got to remember, he's not exactly the manager as well. I've had to kind of stress this on radio. They specify he's the head coach because he's not meant to be in charge of recruitment and whatnot. Ideally, he is in charge of not in charge, but he is playing a hand in recruitment at the moment because there's so much to do.
The boys
but
from
ideally, he's the tactician for the match days. He does the training in the build up, and that's kind of it, or that's how it should be ideally. And there's a whole supporting framework around him to do everything else, take responsibility off his shoulders. He's a protege of Thomas Frank at Brentford, who's now the Spurs manager, and I know the players are raving about the training Pressley has been implementing so far. But the thing is, with Dundee fans, there's still a bit of there's still elements of a meltdown. I'll be honest about that, just because the league season started and our squad isn't complete. But like I say, the feeling is that they're trying to buy players. They've been offered plenty of players, reportedly, that they've knocked back. But they're wanting to take their time to make sure they're getting in the right profiles. They want. Presley says he wants to get to a point where every summer window they're maybe only bringing 2 or 3 players in and not a handful. So we'll see how it goes. I think it's an interesting. I've said that from the start. It's a very intriguing framework from the get-go. It's very American, and I think for a club like Dundee, that's the kind of framework would probably do require something a bit outside the box, a bit left field. I know Hibs and Hearts, technically Derek McInnes and David Gray are head coaches, not managers. Russell Martin
as
is
well.
potentially the same, yeah. So I'm quite keen to see how it works with Dundee. Yeah, so that's kind of like my main thoughts. And as I said, there is some players that kind of catch the eye for Dundee, but yeah, they need to simply get a bit more quality in. I think most people would agree with me that you don't want to make predictions on the league table until you see everyone's squad by the end of the August window.
Yep.
That we have a better idea. So that's kind of where I'll leave it at the moment. Is just simply watch this space. Maybe I'll eat my own words. Maybe this will be a complete disaster. Who knows? To me, it's another experiment.
Yep.
But I don't think it's as it's not as ridiculous as it's made out to be. But again, that's just my view, and of course, I have a bias.
No,
As for
of
him,
course.
I've already touched on them, and I think if you have a good season, who has a fabulous start and a fabulous finish in Scottish football? Doesn't happen. Aberdeen had a fabulous start, it came crashing down. Hibs had a terrible start and they turned it round. So I think
think you're about to be very happy.
Yeah, well, no, that wasn't the route I was going. I was actually going to just talk about Hibs. They got the win. It wasn't particularly a fashionable one, but they got the result that mattered. And I think we might see quite a lot of that from Hibs this season. And it's not to say that they won't play nice football. I think they will. It's just a case that, I think they will simply begin as they mean to go on. And obviously, they got a lot of plaudits for the performance against Midtjylland over the two legs, and deservedly so. For both teams, I would say just watch the space. They're good to move on, Jack, because we've got another team that impressed everyone. Are you good to move? Or
Yep.
Yeah.
Nope. I agree with what you're saying. I mean, to be honest, I quite like Pressley, but I can hope he turns around. That's just my initial feelings of it. But yeah, happy to move on. You let me know where we're going next.
Well, it's going to be Falkirk and Dundee United, a 2-2 draw, because Falkirk, I think, did actually impress quite a lot of people watching. I mean, Dundee United on paper, they finished fourth last season, right? So the fourth best team in the country going away to the newly promoted side. And, I think the draw was the fair result from what I caught of the game. I watched some of it at the time on the TV. Falkirk looked very well organised for the campaign ahead. They could have won the game at the end. There was a bit of a miss hit in the box, but they'll be reasonably pleased with the result. And Dylan Tate's goal is a testament to John McGlynn's style of play. Wonderfully well worked, and what a finish as well. By the way, not just the setup, the finish was great. Dundee United, on the other hand, won't be happy or gutted about it. I think it's a fair result. I think everyone can, or most people can agree with that. They could take positives, but the big task for them moving forward is gelling this kind of newly assembled squad with, it's when that game first came around against Unastrassen, there was no Scots in the lineup. It was all these kind of foreign imports. That's going to take time to gel. That's not going to just hit the ground running naturally. And they've also got some key players out injured as well. In particular, the big ones that stand out for me is newly appointed club captain Ross Graham and Ryan Strain. And that's a Jim Goodwin Dundee United that is, if nothing else, they're very defensively astute. And that's two crucial defenders out for the foreseeable with injuries. On the plus hand though, the new boy Kamara looks like a good find if I'm pronouncing it correctly. But obviously there's a problem that they're going to have to fill the vacuum of goals left behind with Sam Dalby obviously not sticking around. So like I say, in terms of the result, I think both sides can be relatively pleased. Looking ahead, Falkirk will be in good stead, and United they've just still got a little bit of work to do, but it's teething problems that you would expect.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to be covering Falkirk this year. I'm going to be at most of their home games. I was at both their League Cup ties at the Falkirk Stadium, and I was really, really impressed. And now I know they're playing lower league teams, but I was at games against Queen's Park and the game against Spartans, and just despite the level of opposition they're playing, just the way they play football really impressed me. The speed, but not just the speed. They're tough, they're strong, despite some of them looking, slighter. Just they looked really impressive, and then they've got two options up front, and Ross McIver and Brian Graham, who are big guys, target men, can hold the ball up. bring the wingers, Miller and Ross into play. You've got likes of Tate, Spencer, all through the team. Adams does really well at right back as well. Just right through the team, it seems like they've got a group of guys, and I mentioned it with Hibs who have that winning mentality from their run last season. Falkirk have got that across 2 seasons. I know they had a blip towards the end of the year last year, but they've spent 2 years as top dogs, and well, they're not going to be top dogs this year. I think they'll surprise a few people, particularly early doors, and get a few big results. I'm really impressed by them. Dundee United, I've not seen anything of other than highlights, but you know what you're kind of going to get with Jim Goodwin, other than that sort of end. And Aberdeen, he's a solid mid-table Premiership manager. Don't think he'll do anything spectacular. Don't see him leading Dundee United back to fourth, but I think they'll be around that sort of fifth, sixth, seventh sort of position. Dalby, you mentioned, that's a lot of goals they're losing, and I don't see them replacing it. That'll probably be the biggest issue, and we're seeing it just now. They might be out of Europe 1-0 down to Rapid Vienna, but yeah, I can see them having a decent season, but I don't see it being as good as last season. Nothing bad enough to get Jim Goodwin the bullet, but I would be very surprised if they finish fourth or higher again.
Well, I think it's fair to say if they never signed Sam Dalby, they wouldn't have got fourth in the first place. Wouldn't have even been in the European race. That's just how invaluable he was to that team. And I think they went back in for him. They tried to sign him again, and I think Goodwin told them that he wants to build the team around him. Naturally, though, because of how well he done, interest elsewhere was always going to be a bit unlikely. But in regards to how you replace that, we might now see the Dundee United that we almost had last season, just the United without Sam Dalby, and it will be one that I think, it might just float mid-table. But it's still early days, as I said. There's still a month of the transfer window to go. They've pulled the rabbit out of the hat with that transfer once. Maybe Jim Goodwin can do it again. He does have a good eye for an attacking player. You'll kindly remind us that so often that he was there when Bojan Miovski and Duke were brought into Aberdeen. He's obviously always got an eye on the foreign market. That's quite clear. And that's also quite important, I think, as well. Because we're in an era now where Scottish Premiership teams are struggling in the market for the kind of quality they want to bring in, because obviously the money elsewhere, it's just getting so kind of ludicrous. And it's gonna get. Let's be honest, it's only gonna get harder. So they've got to get Scottish clubs around the board have to get more inventive, more creative in what markets they fish in. You saw Hibs a few years ago were fishing in the Norwegian market.
Yep.
Celtic and Hearts were looking into the Eastern Asian market, and even Dundee right now have a connection with CF Monterrey in Mexico. So you're going to see a lot more of that, and a lot more strategic partnerships, I think, over the next few years, at least in the Premiership. I mean, we're already seeing some form take in the Championship. I think Ayr United and Wraith Rovers have now got connections or stronger connections with Celtic and Rangers. So I think it's probably a big plus that Jim Goodwin, he's already on the... And in this sense, I'm going to say he's ahead of the curve, because all the signings have been, from, you chuck a dart on the map, you might have signed a boy from that, from that country. So yeah, I think that will hold them in strong stead. And you've got to think that these players will obviously gel. It just depends. Because there's been a couple of projects. I remember Neil McCann in particular had a massive foreign legion at Dundee in his last season in charge. It was a team that needed time to gel, but it was more time than he had. So by the time he took the bullet, that was the project kind of dead in the water. But yeah, Goodwin has the credit in the bank, took United to Europe. So yeah, I think they're not going to be... Well, the fans can certainly be over dramatic at times. I don't think they're going to be in any danger.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, there's some good building blocks. In Falkirk, I think you're right. They will absolutely catch people off guard with how well they'll do. We have to remember last season, there was a point where only 2 teams had managed to put more than 1 goal beyond Celtic at the halfway mark, and that was Aberdeen and Falkirk. Aberdeen, who had came from behind to secure a 2-2 draw at Parkhead, and Falkirk, although I can't remember the exact order in which the goals came, they were beaten, I think, 5-2 over on the League Cup.
I believe it was 2-2 at a point. I think that sounds right.
They went to the den of Scotland's best team. They played their style of football. Everyone goes there to park the bus, but not Falkirk went there. Obviously, they were disciplined and organised at the back. It goes without saying. But they went there and thought, we're going to stick to our style. We're going to try and break them down. We're going to try and of course, and it worked. They got a couple of
they
goals.
actually led 2-1. Looking back to it now, with about 20 minutes to go.
And Aberdeen as well. They went there. They were brave. That's what I'm getting here. They were brave. So I think you're going to see that a lot more of a brave Falkirk this season. It's a style that, this is a group that's very. You said about being top dogs. They were top dogs for a reason, not just because of the size of the club, but because ever since John McGlynn came to the door, he implemented the style pretty quickly, and there's such a strong try it, take 3, take 2, take 4. There's a strong familiarity with this Falkirk team and how they want to play. So I think we're banging on the drum here with Falkirk and United, but repeating ourselves. But I just think that's because it's true. I think Falkirk will surprise people. United will be all right, and I think, as we said with the earlier game, these teams are all ones to watch. It's a good Premiership this year, actually. It's a very good Premiership.
I've actually got Rangers go away to Falkirk. I think it's in the middle of October. I've already got that penciled in for our traditional early season 1-0 defeat away to a newly promoted side that we seem to do every single year. So I'm already prepared for that one coming up.
Yeah, no, good stuff. Good stuff. Not everyone. I don't think Dundee got a win against Rangers when we came up, but yeah. But looking ahead, because I think we're good to move on from Falkirk and United. It was actually a really good game, but like I said, I couldn't catch the whole thing. There was Celtic and St Mirren. Celtic with a 1-0 victory. It came very late on through Luke McCowan. So I guess starting with St Mirren, they do 9 out of 10 things right for 90 minutes at Parkhead and a sickening late winner. It's the repeat of what happened at the end of the split last season with James Forrest. St Mirren know what they're all about. They won't mull on this. They're a team with a proven strong mentality. I mean, the way they conduct themselves in the split last season was phenomenal. They deserved the European place, I felt, but again, so harshly denied at the end. But they'll be thinking that their day at Parkhead will come again in the near future. Because that's not an accident. That's twice. I know it's twice in a row they've been beat, but that's twice in a row they're on the cusp of a result. And I mean, all they really needed, if you think about it, was if they could just get one break in terms of maybe getting the goal to go 1-0 up and suddenly they're protecting the lead. Yeah, okay, if there's a late equaliser, it'll be a bit sickening, but you're still walking away out of that thinking, you would absolutely take a draw heading out of there. But certainly, as I say, it's a St Mirren team that they're very robust with Stephen Robinson, and it's when have they ever taken a defeat and then it spirals into something else? They're a team that always bounce back, and you wouldn't be surprised if they were in the challenge for a top 6 place again. Then with Celtic, you've got to find ways to win, and that's the value of Luke McCowan. He's a match winner. They've got a good squad of match winners. That's exactly what McCowan was brought in to be. Another option that can come off the bench and win them a set of 3 points. Although I've seen that a lot of the Celtic fans aren't particularly happy with Ida with his display.
Yeah.
And that's something I think we're going to have to definitely touch on because, well, for me, I think they've got to stick with him. They've got to back him. This was a £10 million striker that the fans initially were desperate to bring in. You've got him in. Is it a case that maybe Celtic simply have to play more to his strengths? I mean, they can't expect... I don't think they can expect a Kyogo replacement or a new Kyogo kind of every year kind of thing. And because they were saying themselves at one point, Kyogo was the best striker they had since Larsson, someone would say. I don't entirely agree with that, but that's what a lot of them would say.
No Carlton Cole.
No, exactly. No Carlton Cole. Again, so touching on the game, St Mirren, Celtic, we'll need to touch on Ida as well. I think that is a talking point that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, so obviously for me, listen to this one on the radio, seen the highlights back when I get in, absolutely sickener. Obviously, I was fuming after the Rangers result on Saturday, which we'll get on to in due course. Expected Celtic to take confidence from that, fly out the traps, win 3-0, typical sort of Celtic responding to Rangers dropping points sort of thing. As the game went further and further on, you could hear the frustration coming from the crowd. And this is a Celtic support that are frustrated with their club this summer. Despite how much they've won, they're not pushing on to that next level. And I've seen a lot of frustration online that they're worried that this will be it for Rodgers this year. This will be his last year, no matter what happens, just because of the club stagnating, really. They've just kind of done enough to stay ahead of Rangers, and they're not pushing on to that next level in Europe, despite a good show in the Champions League last year. And you can kind of see that with their transfer business. They've not really made any big signings. In comparison to last year, where they spent obviously 20 million on Engels and Ida. So yeah, I don't know. Obviously, there's still time for Celtic in this window. They might go out and spend 30 million in the next 3 weeks. Who knows? But I can see their complaints. If I was a Celtic fan, I'd be wanting a lot more business done, and for Celtic to put the foot down on Rangers before they get a chance to, mould this new squad together under Russell Martin. I'd be wanting, as a Celtic fan, to put the foot down and pull away and not give them an opportunity. And I think by not making these big moves, they are giving that a slight bit of hope. But Celtic do what Celtic do. They get a last minute goal. How many times have you seen that at Celtic since, Ange Postecoglou came in a few years ago? They just keep going, and eventually, 9 times out of 10, they get their rewards. It's very typical of Celtic to get a last minute goal. Luke McCowan always impressed me since he's went to Celtic. Impressed me at Dundee, as hard as it is for me to say. And yeah, that midfield at Celtic's probably their strongest area. They've got 6 options in the middle of the park, all who are very good threats. Out wide, they look a bit weak, and up top, they look weak. Adam Ida, I've maintained from the start, if he doesn't score that Scottish Cup winning goal against Rangers, Celtic don't sign him. They make the bid of 4 or 5 million, Norwich reject it, and they move on because he's not a 9-10 million pound player. He's just not. But Celtic, and I don't know if it's Rodgers or Peter Lawwell, whoever made that decision, is kind of needing to stick by it. It's kind of like stubbornness to prove, no, this is a guy. And I think it might cost them if they don't upgrade on him, because, like you mentioned, it doesn't suit the style of play they want to play. They've got the wingers getting to the byline. They don't need a target man. They need someone that can drop deep, play 1-2s, be a finisher. And it just doesn't play to either strengths, what Celtic look to do. But it looks like they're going to persevere with them unless something changes in the next couple of weeks. For St Mirren, I've seen them pre-season as well. Their match with Dumbarton, very impressed with them on that day. Very impressed from the highlights I've seen them at Parkhead. Again, kind of similar to Dundee United. They're going to be around that 4th to 7th, 8th sort of mark. They're going to be hard to beat. They'll be a good home team, pick up a few results away from home. Don't see them pushing 3rd place, but will never be any ball down the bottom. I expect them to probably finish 6th again, to be honest. Stephen Robinson's perfect manager for SPFL. He's exactly what you need to be a solid team. Probably not ideal if you want to start pushing up towards that third spot, but for where St Mirren are, he's ideal. He's built a good team there. He's got a good group of players. The supporters seem to like him. And I think they'll get a result, whether it be at Parkhead or another one at Ibrox. They just know how to go to both those places and set up where other teams don't. And at some point or another this season, they'll get a big result.
I think they'll be desperate to work on their consistency, because I know it's 2 back-to-back top 6 finishes, which for a couple of years ago for St Mirren was unthinkable. But I think they have it in the locker. I think they could do it again. I think they go in the top 6 again, and they're on the, like I say, they're on the cusp of European football. They deserved it when they did get it. I refuse to rule them out of going for a three-peat and potentially getting Europe this season. Like I said, it's just, you're right. Stephen Robinson is he just brings something entirely different to what St Mirren have had before. There's such a strong stability. But when we talk about Celtic as well, you touch on Ida. Do they have to change the style of play to suit him? I'm going to say yes. I think that's what I mean by they have to back him. I think that's your man. You've invested in him. I wouldn't say he's the wrong player to have. I think it's just a case that you've got to adjust. Brendan Rodgers, once upon a time, was a game away from winning the Premier League at Liverpool. He's a very high caliber manager. He should have the capabilities of making the tweaks and making this work. I mean, come on. I mean, you look at Celtic. This is a team that they're going to dominate possession in just about every game they play. They're going to make chances every game they play. I'll take the stick for saying it. How hard can it be, especially when you have 100 times the budget of everyone else, to bring in these internationalists and whatnot? And of course, they sold Nicholas Kuhn, who was a star player last season, maybe kind of tailored off towards the end. Very healthy profit. Yeah, if I'm a Celtic fan, I'm probably expecting them to reinvest some of that because, as you say, if they're looking weak in attack, then yeah, like bolster some more options. But at the same time, I think the Celtic board will be sitting there saying they've spent a lot of money. As you say, Arne Engels cost a lot of money. Was he an £11
Yep.
£11 million?
Yep.
£11 midfielder, an £11 million midfielder for Celtic. There's definitely more. I remember. I'm kind of having a bit of a mind fog at the moment, but I remember looking at the Celtic midfield last season in the Scottish Cup final, looking at it and saying, "Wow, that's a midfield that's worth something like was it £18 million?" With Engels being 11,
And
and
that's not even counting Cal McGregor, who's came
yeah,
through.
exactly. It wasn't even counting Callum McGregor. I can't remember who the third centre mid was that would have started.
Bernardo, I believe it was. I know.
Yes, that's it. Thank you, Bernardo. Exactly. And then you compare that to what Aberdeen had spent in their midfield. It's crazy. And of course, they've got the staff at Celtic is a different level to the rest of Scottish football. Their whole scouting recruitment, even their kitchen recruitment, will be something absolutely insane compared relative to the rest of Scottish football. So they should have absolutely the means, the finances. And yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe this could be Brent. I've seen some people say that this could be Brendan Rodgers' last season. I kind of felt that he was here to stick to the 10 this time because he went back down south. He brought great success to Leicester to kind of begin with. Then obviously things happen and he's kind of forced out. And Leicester didn't really look like they had the capabilities, the ambitions that they had previously. So I kind of assumed he's not just going back to Celtic to rebulk his stock again. I kind of felt, oh no, he's got to be there to stay this time, surely.
No, I think the comments he's made since he came back up, he's like, I'll be here for the duration of my contract. It's always been, I'll be here for at least 3 years. I'll be here for my contract. And him doubling down on that this summer suggests to me that, yeah, it's going to be the 3 years and done for him. I also think we talked about with the was here for the 10 thing. I think that probably would, if a Rangers fan, it pains me to say it, if Rangers don't have this takeover, that's a very real possibility with that old board. But I think now they've kind of got guys that know what they're doing in football there. I think Rodgers is probably seeing a potential challenge maybe a few years away and being.
Are you about to say he's about to shite it from the Rangers?
No. I think he's probably going to look at it and go, I've had 3 years here where it's been pretty easy, and this is probably, if he wins a treble this year, his stock's probably going to be as high as it's going to be, especially after last year's Champions League performance. I think it all depends on the offers he gets. He could go at the end of the next year and only have offers from the Championship, but like, no, I'm staying another 3 years. But I think if he gets a decent offer from the continent or down south, or dare I say it, Saudi Arabia, he would probably look to move on. It's just based off the comments he's been saying, where he's from day one he's been like that. No, I'm here for my contract, and it's 3 years, and the fact he's not signing an extension just kind of points to that for me.
Yeah, I think I'll be honest. When it comes to Celtic and Rangers, I try to avoid as much as I can because I used to find it so tedious hearing about them all the time. So I am a bit out of the loop to a degree, but I feel like I keep enough of an eye to get an understanding, and maybe that helps with with a different perspective. Because I kind of felt that when I say set out for the 10, I don't mean set out that he will do it. It was more like that must be his personal ambition. But I don't deny anything that you've said. Maybe this is going to be the last hurrah. But again, it's one game at a time. We need to see what how Russell Martin's side will shape up this season, and we will move on to them soon. But first, we have Hearts versus Aberdeen. If you're ready to move on, that is, Jack.
No, of course. I thought that was going to be a sort of perfect segue there.
Almost. I just don't want to have any hanging notes.
No, all good.
So yeah, Hearts 2, Aberdeen 0 at Tynecastle. The opening game on a Monday night, which is stupid, by the way. That's just get it on the weekend. Aberdeen looked dreadful. Yengi is the talk of the town, and not in a good way. They can't afford to start this league season the same way they finished last season's league campaign. They're in a bit of a slump. I think questions were rightly asked about their character after that defeat at Tannadice, which cost them fourth place. And maybe The cup final, obviously, that's historic. That was a monumental achievement. There is some argument on the outside that there's maybe paper over the cracks. Regardless, Jimmy Tilleen's done an incredible job from the debut season, but now it's time. They often say that the second season can be the hardest. So I don't know if that will be the case for Aberdeen. Um, it's tough. It's really tough to say. Hearts, on the other hand, appointing Derek McInnes was a very shrewd appointment, and he's got players that he trusts. Involved. He's kept Shankland on. Stuart Finlay was on the score sheet. That's a player, of course, McInnes thinks very highly of. Brought him from Kilmarnock. And it could have been more, couldn't it? It finished 2-0, but the disallowed goal for Lawrence Shankland. Hearts, I think we're going to have an exciting race across all boards in Scottish football. The third place race between the likes of Hearts and Hibs. But will Aberdeen be in the mix, or are we going to see another stagnation like I saw previously with Glass and Robson?
Yeah, I think they'll be the Edinburgh 2 going for that third spot. Aberdeen, I think, will be fifth. I think they'll probably comfortably finish fifth. I don't know, maybe St Mirren and Dundee United might pip them, but yeah, I can't see by Hearts and Hibs for that third spot this year. I think Hearts have done smart business. It's typical Derek McInnes. He's going to set up, they're going to play some decent stuff, be hard to beat against Rangers and Celtic, and just kind of grind out results everywhere else. But they signed some exciting players. They look as if they're playing a bit more expansive than McInnes would be used to, usually does. But he's got a bigger budget than he usually has, even from his time in Aberdeen. But I don't know if he's going to quite enjoy his chairman's talk. Tony Bloom saying he expects Hearts to challenge for a title in the near future. Not sure he'll be keen on that pressure put on him, but that's what you've got to do. But
well, I think there's an expectation for success at Hearts. They're expecting to try and win some trophies. I mean, they came so close several times with Robbie Neilson. And McInnes, I don't think it's outlandish to say, is a better manager than Robbie Neilson. Yeah. And he has won things previously, won the League Cup with Aberdeen. And from what I remember, now, the main thing Hearts want to do first and foremost is split the Old Firm. They've not been shy of saying that. They want to have the ambition to split and compete. Now, in recent times, the Old Firm has been split, and it was Derek McInnes' Aberdeen. I don't know if you recall that. Rangers came into the league, and Aberdeen beat them to second place. And whilst Rangers were absent in the league, the only team that looked like they could maybe bid a challenge against Celtic was Aberdeen, particularly in the 15-16 season. And McInnes, although he used to get so much criticism for eye-bleeding football, that was a fantastic Aberdeen team to watch at the time. It was built quietly, it was built with patience, it was built over time. And to remind the listener, that was Johnny Hayes and Niall McGinn on the wing for service, and a clinical Adam Rooney up front. Exactly. That was I can remember Danny Ward was the goalie. I feel like it was a midfield three. Kenny McLean, I remember, was involved. My memories again.
Shea Logan part of that.
Shea Logan in the right back. Yeah, it was an attacking team though. Yep. Very expressive on the flanks and a clinical goal scorer up top. They've got Lawrence Shankland. If you get him up to speed, he's your clinical finisher. I think McInnes, he has the formula. He has it noted down. It's just about implementing that at Hearts. And I think if anyone's going to do it, it probably would be him. He's got the track record. For me, it's an appointment that just makes so much sense. And again, what better way to start the season than to defeat what should be rivals in that department and beat them pretty convincingly. But like I say, I've got concerns for Aberdeen. Big concerns. Just the way they finished last season outside the Scottish Cup. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's just something about them that wasn't quite functioning. And now going into the new league season, look, I know it's match day one, but sometimes if the same problems aren't being addressed, they can manifest. They can snowball into worse things. So you got to wonder, because they spent a lot of money in January, Aberdeen, to try and turn their fortunes around, and it didn't really quite work, at least in sense of the league campaign. I don't want to sound like I'm undermining them winning the Scottish Cup, because of course that's incredible, and I think they're the only team to have beaten a Brendan Rodgers side in a cup final, if I'm not mistaken, in Scotland.
Only ones to beat them at Hampden full stop, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think there's much more I can say about that really, because that's kind of everything that I've got laid out. I don't know if you agree, disagree. I think you're bound to agree on the McInnes aspect.
Yeah.
I know it's maybe a lot of pressure being put on him from Tony Bloom, but I think that's actually something he will kind of relish. He wants to be, backing himself to be that guy.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add to that would probably be on the Aberdeen point. I think as good as winning the Scottish Cup was, there's an element sometimes with teams that aren't used to winning. When they do win something, they kind of feel they've reached the mountaintop and don't keep pushing up. That may be a concern for them, but it's too early in the season to really tell. They need to have time to gel, and we'll see how it goes. But that is a slight concern.
Yeah. And then moving on, we have Kilmarnock 2, Livingston 2. From what I caught in the highlights, I think Livy will be disappointed in the nature of which they conceded the goals. It just kind of walked right through the middle of the park. But they did show character to get back into it, to get the draw, albeit Kilmarnock were reduced to 10 men. That's got to be the main talking point here. Kilmarnock and red cards. It can't go on like this, can it? It can. It has, and it did. Yeah, Kilmarnock, red cards, not ideal for Stuart Kettlewell. They had the 2-0 lead. They had the cash payout, but they couldn't see it through. And they've had quite a few bodies come in this window as well, Kilmarnock. So you can maybe argue that there's going to be a bit of an adjusting period, but that is quite a disappointing result for them. Against newly promoted side at home, 2-0 up, and it's collapsed.
Yeah, I've kind of looked at Kilmarnock, and while they've done a lot of business, it all seems very like for like. Vassell's went out up top, they've signed Dackers, that's very like for like. Everyone that's kind of went out has been replaced, but they don't seem to have improved. They all seem very similar level of players. And I don't expect much from Kilmarnock this year. I don't think they'll go down, but I kind of see them in down the bottom half. Stuart Kettlewell solid enough to kind of keep them steer them clear of a relegation scrap, but haven't really been impressed so far with them. Don't think they've improved too much, but I'm not seeing enough of them to make a full judgment. That's just my initial eye test from them. Livingston, I think I'm torn on Livingston because one part of me is saying, look at the squad, they're going down. And then the other half of me is like, it's David Martindale's Livingston. Yeah. We've seen that. We said that how many years in a row about them. And they just kept staying up. So maybe it'll be the same this time around. Maybe it won't. But I would not be writing Livingston off. And they went to a difficult away ground out a point. Probably should have had 3. So, yeah, both teams I reckon will be down the bottom of the league. But I wouldn't be tipping either for relegation.
Yeah, with Livingston, I think the same thing. You look and it doesn't look great on paper, but then again, when does it ever look great on paper?
Yeah, when David Martindale never looked
great. When does it even look good on grass? They don't even play on grass. They play on plastic. With the players they do have, it's players that I think will relish the style that they play. Livingston like to play an awkward game. They like to try and bring teams down to a level they're not comfortable playing with. They like, they relish in making it scrappy as possible. And players like Stevie May, players like Zach Rudden, I think will relish in those kinds of games. And there are also players as well with Premiership experience, bear in mind. I think Amy Kerr, again, I'm biased, but that's, to me, a very solid signing for their shoes. And Mo Silla, I think, caught a lot of people off guard. A bit more of a classy player, but a strong physical element. The one thing that will drag him down, though, is the fact that he was very guilty at Dundee of not really tracking his runners. So often we conceded goals that Tony Docherty, you could see, was fizzing at Mo Silla for refusing to follow his runners. But again, I think that he kind of suits Livingston to that degree that he'll take it on the deck and you'll have a bit of quality in midfield in times when they'll need it.
Yeah.
And of course, like I say, he has the physical component. He's a dream Livingston signing, I think. He's over 6 foot. He's strong. That's kind of David Martindale. That's everything on David Martindale's wish list, I think. It's big, strong giants. And Muirhead, of course, on the score sheet, instrumental for them last season. No surprise. I think, we talk about Falkirk surprising teams. Livingston potentially have those capabilities as well. And I think particularly in the sight of individuals like Robbie Muirhead. I maybe said Aaron Muirhead there initially. I apologise. It's Robbie Muirhead that used to be at Kilmarnock, actually. That was a former club. He used to play for Dundee United as well. He could never really make it quite work for himself in the top flight. But maybe now this is the season for him to kind of establish himself
Perfect
as
place.
a Premiership striker.
Yeah, perfect place for him to be if he's playing the Premiership. Perfect manager for that style of player. You see what Livingston are trying to do. They're trying to be big, trying to be bulky, trying to be experienced, trying to be hard to beat. Worked last time for Dave Martindale for a number of years until it didn't. Can I repeat it? We'll wait and see.
Yeah, and as for Kilmarnock, Stuart Kettlewell, for me, he's always been a solid Premiership proven manager. The work he done at Ross County, and then Motherwell, of course, wasn't really ideal. Quite funny as well that he leaves Motherwell due to the abuse in the stands. So then he goes to Kilmarnock, who was the same club that 12 minutes into fans returning to the grounds after the year hiatus of the COVID-19 pandemic, they were booing the fuck out of their team.
Brings a tear to your eye. Brings a tear to your eye. That's peak Cinch, as it used to be. Peak William Hill.
Yeah, that's tremendous stuff. But Stuart Kettlewell, yeah, it's. I think it's going to be a tough job to take, though. It's going to be tough to follow the act of Derek McInnes. I know Killie fans will say it was probably the right time for McInnes to move on. I don't disagree with that.
Yeah,
but Kettlewell, yeah, the following act, this is going to be tough because at least with McInnes, you're guaranteed stability in the league. You've shown the capabilities of getting Kilmarnock into Europe. They've obviously had a very good record against the Old Firm at Rugby Park as well. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't really hit those same expectations again, and it's not particularly a dig at Kettlewell. It's more to say how good of a job or how in capable hands they were between Steve Clarke and Derek McInnes, the guys that came before him. Because you can look at Tommy Wright, who was there, and it was a disaster. But at the point when Tommy Wright came in, he was a capable Premiership manager. At that point, he was the most successful manager St Johnstone ever had. So, yeah, it's not an easy gig at Kilmarnock by any means. So I think it's going to be a tough job for him. But I'm actually quite a fan of Kettlewell. So obviously kind of wish him all the best, as long as it's not to Dundee's expense. But that, as I say, disappointing start. And yeah, one to watch, definitely Robin Muirhead. As I've said before, watch this space. Don't really have much more. I feel we're cheapening out on Kilmarnock, but there's not. Again, I feel like there's not too much more to say.
I think it's still too early to really make a judgment on him. I did see one comment saying that Stuart Kettlewell is basically the team you Derek McInnes. So we'll wait and see how that kind of transpires.
No, he's the team with David De Gea with that hairline. I think.
Oh, Jesus, it's stuck on there, isn't it?
It doesn't. Yeah, it never changes either. He never. It's like Mikel Arteta. It's the same haircut over the course of like 15 years.
Yeah, Gale Force wins, staying completely still.
Even when he played, he had the same haircut when he was a player.
That's us done for the week. No more games at the weekend.
Yeah. Motherwell, yeah, she's good, thanks. She drew 1-1 with Rangers, and they could have won the game from what I've seen, Jack. At least from a certain point in the highlights, it was just kind of constantly a wave of Motherwell chances. A very well taken goal, very well taken header as well from James Tavernier, who will have his own talking point, I think, just a moment. But obviously, I think the main thing to talk about is that Rangers are already having questions raised on their mentality. They've got a leak on the inside, leaking the lineups before they might be properly announced. And Russell Martin's first post-match interview was actually quite mental. He came across as a man who's out for blood. So this is going to be, his real first test at Rangers, isn't it? Alongside bouncing back against Dundee on Saturday. He's got to deal with, I wouldn't say a squad in turmoil, but he's got to kind of fix the harmony.
Yeah. So, yep. Really excited. I was after the Panathinaikos games. We weren't great. Got through. Style of play starting to come together. And you're thinking, right, let's get stuck in. Let's have a good start. We've not had a good start since Giovanni Van Bronckhorst last season. The Gerrards last season when they left midway through. We've not had a strong start really since then. Thinking get some points on the board, and then from week one, it's just kind of went up in smoke. Tavernier scores, obviously. Maybe he should not have been taking all the set pieces all these years. Maybe he should have not ended them. And you're thinking, right, here we go. And then just nothing, just falls flat. Guys don't seem to be used to the style of play yet. Nothing sticking up front. Max Aarons doesn't look great on the left-hand side. Just looked really disjointed. And then in the second half, especially, Motherwell just kind of seemed to work out the deficiencies in the Rangers team and challenged them. And they got the equaliser late on, but they also had a big chance after that to win the game. And actually, if you're watching as a Rangers fan, I feel it's 2 points dropped. But if you're watching that as a neutral, you're like, they're lucky to get out there with a draw. The Rangers, not impressed and was very downhearted after the game. Of course, Rangers did go on to win 3-0 against Victoria Pilsen, and I think that was an excellent performance, and that kind of reignited a bit of hope in me. But the question, as it always has been with Rangers for the last 3-4 years, they've shown they can do it in Europe. Can they translate it to domestic form? That's really what the big question is going to be for Russell Martin heading into the weekend.
Yeah, that's a good point. They seem to always raise their game for Europe. It's obviously a different mindset in total. Then when it comes to the league, they may be a bit too complacent. And as I say, there's already questions being raised about character. Do you expect more in terms of like a rebuild in the squad? Because I feel like we hear that every season that Rangers need a rebuild, and then come the league season, you look at the lineup and it's like, well, you know what, that lineup's kind of more or less the same. I don't know. It's and just before you answer that for me, Jack, as well, I want to throw in an additional point. Your thoughts on James Tavernier, because of course he's the captain. He gets a lot more stick than he probably deserves, but he does cause a bit of a tear, I think, amongst Rangers fans, whether they need something fresh, whether he should go. For me, I think he's one of those players that you don't realise what you've got until he's out the picture, and he still very often kind of pulls Rangers out the shit, to be honest. So yeah, your thoughts on that as well as the rebuild.
Yeah, James Tavernier was an excellent player for Rangers, underappreciated for years. I think he is on the way down, has been for the last 2 seasons. I'm delighted with signing Max Aarons to replace him, but I don't think he should be leaving just yet. I think he's a more than capable option to have there to come in and out of the team when needed. We've seen it in the Pilsen game. He came on for the last 20 minutes and he was very impressive, bringing on that energy late on. He's not what he was, but he's still probably one of the better fullbacks in the league and a good asset to have around the place. In terms of the transfer business, yeah, I expect maybe another 3 or 4 bodies to come in, to be honest. I think I still need central defender. They've been linked with a boy from Betis, a left back, another winger, and another centre forward before completely ready. You mentioned the lineup, still a lot of players from last year, but we are still Telo Asgard's come in. He's injured, and Mikey Moore's not 18 yet. He can't actually play on his loan deal till he's 18. So that's 2 guys that are probably coming in to start, not in the lineup. And of course, I think there'll be further business. I was really impressed by what I've seen in Pilsen. Don't want to sound a bit too overconfident. I'm expecting a decent win on Saturday, and hopefully that kind of kicks things off. Being back at Ibrox in front of your own crowd, and then go from there. But I think already having dropped points against Motherwell, this game against Celtic at the end of the month is a must-win because you can't afford to go 5 points behind that early on.
Yeah, no, listen, I kind of said already that in regards to Dundee and Ibrox, we're kind of already bracing ourselves for defeat. We do most of the time. I mean, we've not went to Ibrox and avoided defeat since 2001, and that was the last time we claimed victory. And so we've not even had a draw in that run. It came close, but no cigar.
Can we play every week?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, feels like it sometimes. But yeah, so it's but at the same time as well, it's one thing to get the win against Dundee on the Saturday. But as I said, there's more challenges to this job that Russell Martin will have to face. Because the mentality of the squad, that's a big one. Because he's got to fix this domestic problem that they're up for every game domestically. Not just the ones at Ibrox, but the ones away from home as well. That's kind of plagued Rangers. And yeah, you make a good point. There is signings still yet to come in. We're still in early August. But it's such a big gap, I feel, to catch up for a real title challenge. And you're right, I don't think they can afford an early defeat of Celtic. Forget about the points. You say 5 points. It's not just that. It's the
mentality.
It's the mentality. It's the morale.
Yep.
If they could get a result against Celtic early on, then it's like,
completely changes.
Yeah, but exactly that. Changes the complex.
I hear what you're saying all the time about the gap being so big, but the way I see it is you don't need to close the gap on Celtic. You just need to get yourself to a level where you can beat the other 10 consistently, and then the old firms will take care of themselves. You don't need to be better than Celtic. You just need to be good enough to put away the other 10 on a regular basis.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but I think having the quality is obviously what gets you that consistency.
Yeah.
Because I think with Russell Martin, he comes across to me as a very progressive coach, and that's why
Yeah.
they went for him. It's someone they feel he's going to have a good long term interest at Rangers.
It's something
Um,
different.
yeah, and he's coached at when I say the highest level, to me, the highest level is Premier League football.
Yeah.
You can then say there's Champions League and all that as well. Yeah, sure, but the Premier League for me is I would deem that to be the highest level because it's all the 20 teams they have to perform at such an elite scale. When you're playing, there's so many like top teams. I mean, in terms of European places, there can only be about 8, but realistically, teams that finish even as low as 15th could easily be in the shout of those European regions. So he didn't have a great time, I don't think, at Southampton. But at the same time, he's had that experience of coaching that caliber of player. If he can have those caliber of players, because I'm going to be honest, you bring Southampton into the Scottish Premiership, and I don't need to spell it out loud. It's I don't want to kind of peel off as if I'm kind of waffling here, but the point I'm ultimately trying to get to is he has the experience coaching at such a high end level. If you can bring those caliber of players, if you can coach that caliber into these players, then yeah, they could very well have a good stab at it. I think maybe in the first season, it's maybe asking a bit too much.
Yeah.
I think the Rangers fans, as long as they see progression, as long as they can see, well, you know what, the away form isn't so bad anymore. We'll look like we maybe challenge in the cups. Maybe the league won't be immediate, but you can see the progress there to build towards.
I'm not expecting to win the league, but I'm expecting a challenge. I'm expecting to go in post split with some hope at least. That's my aim for the season.
And you know what? I said he's a man that's out for blood, but I think that's a good thing. And
Yeah.
that when I watched the interview, I thought, there's no fucking about here. He's laying it out raw, and it kind of feels like, I don't know, for lack of a better term, it's like you get the sense he's taking this really seriously. Whereas with Clermont, it was kind of he came across quite, I don't know if you'd agree, but quite sheepish. You kind of turn his neck in and say, oh well, I think the whole Dens Park gate issue, trying to blame everything on the Dens Park pitch. He dropped points to Ross County. He was still blaming the Dens Park pitch. Whereas this is a guy that I don't think Russell Martin's the kind of guy that wants to make excuses. He strikes me as someone that, it's all on him, and he wants it to be all on him. And we'll soon see how that translates. But looking ahead at the weekend fixtures, we've got Livy against Falkirk, St Mirren against Motherwell, Rangers against Dundee. I think we're quite unanimous on how that's going to turn out. And then we've got Aberdeen Celtic, United Hearts, Hibs and Kilmarnock. So again, some good matchups there. I guess starting with Livy and Falkirk, the two newly promoted sides. I think Livy were quite good at getting a couple of results against Falkirk last season, despite the fact Falkirk went on to win the league. So that's a very winnable game, obviously, for them, for Livingston. Falkirk over to Livy. Yeah, I might, we're talking about how Falkirk will impress people. That might be one to back Livy. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I know Livingston done well against them last year, but I think Falkirk with a swing their step again. I think they should be winning this one. Falkirk. Been wrong before. Maybe a close game. I can see either a draw or a narrow Falkirk win, but I don't see Livingston coming away with 3 points.
Yeah, and St Mirren versus Motherwell. Can Motherwell keep that vein of form away to Paisley? Again, Paisley's such a tough place to go.
Yeah, I'm serious. That's a Mirren win for this one. I think Motherwell, the squad, well, they got a good result against Rangers. How many times do you see it with a team getting a result against the Old Firm next week dropping off? I think St Mirren and Paisley, good enough. I think they'll get maybe a win here by a goal or two.
Yeah, no, I agree. Although I think Motherwell do have a lot of quality in their team. And I quite like the look of the new manager so far as well. From what I've heard, what's going on in the
they play good stuff, definitely.
Yeah, and they've got the players to suit it as well. I think you'll see. I was on about Dundee having players to watch. Motherwell definitely have a host of players. I think Maswa, how do you pronounce his name? Tawanda Maswanise.
Yeah, he's looked excellent so far.
I don't think I've pronounced that right. I think I've completely butchered that.
No, that sounded like it was on Sky Sports, so take that as you will.
Yeah. Right. Well, yeah, I think he's I think he's yet to come up. We're yet to see the best of him, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I'm doing a poor job at saying it, but that's what I'm trying to say. And I don't think he's the only one. They're expecting, I think, a big money bid for Lennon Miller at some point, and they're the kind of club that do reinvest in their profits. So Motherwell definitely one to watch. But yeah, I'm going to back St Mirren. Rangers Dundee, let's say that's unanimous. Aberdeen Celtic, yeah, come on. Come on. Celtic win. And then United Hearts, Hibs Kilmarnock at Easter Road and Tannadice. Okay, starting with Hibs. With Kilmarnock, I'm going to back the Hibees. I think they look good. They look strong. A strong start. Kilmarnock, again, away to Easter Road. Yeah, no, Hibs the stronger side. Kelly, disappointing result. I don't see them bouncing back at Easter Road. Then as for United against Hearts, well, as we say, they're playing the European game just now, but it is at Tannadice, so I don't know. Maybe a draw for that one. Will our predictions come true, or will we have egg in our faces? Will you be laughing at us in the comments and calling us all different kinds of names under the sun? I hope so. I enjoy it.